What's going on, guys? We finally have some good news. We're seeing some signs that Congress is potentially gonna try to push some stimulus to the American people. We are finally getting some good news. All right, so I wanna break down what this new stimulus bill is, how this could impact the American people. Gonna talk about food assistance. We gotta talk about gas prices, because that's really why this additional stimulus and additional relief is coming in. We need to talk about the new government spending bill and what's included in that as well. So a lot of stuff to discuss, but let's first get into the potential of getting stimulus checks. Now, if you have questions on any of this stuff, you can always ask your questions down in the comment section below. This bill was actually just introduced today, so there's still a lot of people that are digesting this information. But here's what we know. A lot of people, millions of Americans, are waiting for a stimulus check. And they've been saying that with inflation, with gas prices, just trying to get through the last 2 years, get their lives back. It's been difficult. Well, today, 2 Democrats actually introduced legislation to provide additional stimulus to the American people. This is coming from Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island and Representative Rocana from California. They introduced this bill. And what they are saying is that they want to tax large oil companies that produce or import more than 300,000 barrels per day of oil. They want them to pay a 50% tax. Now get this, it's not 50% tax on their revenue, okay? Here's how this would work. This 50% tax would be applied to the current price per barrel versus the average price per barrel between 2015 and 2019. So whatever that price is, the price difference, that's what the oil companies would be taxed with at the end of the year. Now, with this funding, the proposal would actually include individual taxpayers would get, again, we're going to go over this, but we don't know what the exact numbers would be, okay? But according to the proposal, what they are saying is that, I'll show you this right here, what they are saying right here is that tax filers making under $75,000 for individuals or $150,000 for couples would receive the payments. But at $120 per barrel, single filers would receive $240 per year and joint filers would receive $360 per year. What you need to keep in mind though, okay, their plan, this is for quarterly checks, okay, quarterly checks, okay, not yearly. So that amount right here, 360 versus 240, that could be split into a quarter. So just understand, it might not be a huge check, but it would be something, okay? Now, what we are seeing in this, and again, this is just big companies. These would be things like Exxon, Chevron, companies like that, not the small guys. Small guys aren't gonna be touched here. But what we are seeing is that this actually does 2 things. And if you look at the kind of the way this bill was structured, this would either cause bigger oil companies to either lower the price for their oil to avoid paying a very excessive tax, or they pay the tax and the American people get some of their money back, right? So it really helps with their daily needs. And so that's actually very big news. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that's interesting the way that they framed this. So we'll see what happens. Again, this was introduced today. So we'll see. But my expectation is this exact bill will not pass. I don't even think this would pass through a budget reconciliation. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because this is the idea. You got to get that ball rolling. That's the first step. And I think this does exactly that. It's an idea that would solve the issue with gas prices, or it would at least kind of fix that a little bit. But again, it gets the ball rolling. Because as of right now, gas prices, I think we can all agree, gas prices are out of control. Many Republicans say that if we can come up with a vaccine against a deadly virus, and we do that almost immediately, then we can obviously come up with a solution to get gas and energy prices under control, right? And I addressed this yesterday, how a few economists were actually discussing gas vouchers to the American people. And the American people would receive a stimulus check if they didn't use their entire gas voucher. Well, what we are hearing today is that one Senate aide said, yes, this is part of the discussions. However, we don't know how many people were even considering this. So just keep in mind that this is still a preliminary discussion. And when it comes to gas prices, according to the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, she said that the Biden administration is looking into multiple different ways to lower the economic impact on the American people. Well, when she said the economic impact, there's something called an economic impact payment. Those are stimulus checks. So it's just, again, all the discussions right now seem like something is going to happen for the American people. But again, I don't want to promise anything because honestly, I have no idea and I have no ability to push for stimulus checks. I'm just a regular voter, regular guy, just like you and everyone else. Now, Jen Psaki also made it very clear that restarting the Keystone XL pipeline is not even on the table. Now, and I could be wrong here, so don't quote me directly on this, but to my understanding, the Keystone pipeline is still active, okay? The Keystone XL pipeline, that is just the extension, okay? It's just the extension that's been shut down, okay? It's really just building the whole thing, okay? Now, the oil that would be produced primarily from the Keystone XL pipeline, that is being sent overseas, and even from the Keystone pipeline, it's being sent overseas. So we aren't really seeing a direct benefit here in the United States from that, but with supply elsewhere increased, it would increase the world supply, which means there would be more eventually that would trickle back to the United States, which would lower prices. So in a way, it does have an impact on oil prices or on gas prices, but it's not a direct price correlation. So just keep that in mind. But let's get into the House bill that they passed today. Okay, it actually passed this morning. And as of recording this video, I think the Senate is still discussing this. Yeah, they're still discussing this. But the House passed the $1.5 trillion government funding bill today. That was this morning. This bill was 2,741 pages long. And according to lawmakers, they were given about 10 minutes to read the entire bill. And what they're saying is that they obviously needed it bad enough to get the government funded. They had to vote for this. Now, if this wasn't bad enough, they voted for this during the middle of the night. Many people weren't even, they were very groggy, sleepy, some maybe not even coherent, who knows? But they voted on it and it passed. Now, what is crazy about all this is that lawmakers have been complaining for the past couple of years about not getting enough time to read the bills before they are asked to vote on them. But when the bills are presented to all the lawmakers and they're told, we're going to have a vote very soon, they still pass the bill. And it's shocking to me that they continue to do the same stuff. And it just goes to show you that if lawmakers were worried about the national deficit and making sure that our tax dollars went the furthest, they would take the time to read the bill. They would make sure that the pork was pulled out. They wouldn't be so generous about just giving money away to other countries that honestly is not even the lawmakers' money. It's our money. It's our tax dollars, right? And after I reported this about the bill this morning, okay, many people commented and wanted to know what was even in the bill because I didn't discuss it. I said about 50% was for non-defense spending. The other 50% was pretty much for defense. Well, let's break it down a little bit and just keep in mind that this bill, as of right now, it only passed the House, not the Senate yet, because there's one thing that is kind of holding it up. So what's inside this $1.5 trillion government funding bill? Well, here's what I can tell you. What we know is that there's $575 million to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act. And that is where we're seeing a little bit of a holdup. And I say this because just a short while ago, GOP Senator Dan Sullivan, he stated that he had concerns regarding this in the omnibus bill. Okay, so he's the one that's kind of holding this up. We know there's $24.6 billion for federal student aid programs. Now, this is including funding that will increase the maximum Pell Grant by about $400. It's going to increase it to $6,895 per year. So a little bit of an increase there. Here's another big one, and I want to be very clear on this because there's kind of two parts to this. There's $26.9 billion for child nutrition programs. Now, this $26.9 billion, it also includes $1.8 billion to boost over the previous year for school lunches and a summer SNAP program. That was a big thing that I discussed just the other day as well, is that wasn't there. There was a limited amount of funding. Now, here's what I want to be very clear on. The $26.9 billion for the child nutrition programs, again, so kind of pandemic EBT, SNAP benefits, stuff like that. This doesn't include funding for waivers that would actually enable schools to offer universal free lunches, just like they have been doing throughout this entire pandemic. And I addressed this the other day as well, that this specific provision, it ends, I believe, on April 16th. So this is something that needs to be pretty much addressed soon, or else universal free lunches will end and only certain people will get them. We also know that in this omnibus bill, there's roughly $750 billion towards defense spending. And then something that made a lot of people mad, and this is something that I hate reading the bills. Now, I'm just gonna tell you right now, just be 100% transparent. I didn't read 2,700 pages of this bill. I searched through it, okay? Kind of just looked at different things. But this bill, there's 4,000 earmarks in this bill, according to The Hill. This means that lawmakers were able to get specific legislation passed for their pet projects, for their home states and their districts. And some of these things are good. Some of these things aren't horrible. But some of these things could have been done through the infrastructure bills, right? Which we already passed $1.2 trillion for that. But some of these things include, there's community centers, fire stations, airport terminals, there's a regional water project that's in here, local school programs, even workforce training, okay? Bunch of different things. And there's, according to The Hill, there's over 4,000 earmarks for specific lawmakers. How crazy is that? Like, we don't even know what some of these things are, right? But they're in there. And regarding inflation, let's talk about that for a second, because again, we keep on hearing the reports of, hey, we got to worry about inflation. We got to worry about a national deficit, but we're just now spending money on, airport terminals when that money should have been, pretty much put in the infrastructure bill for $1.2 trillion, right? Community centers, fire stations. It's a little interesting what's happening right now. But regarding inflation, Senator Joe Manchin was asked today if he's satisfied with the way the White House has handled inflation, and he said no. He also said, and I quote, "I think there's a lot more we can do. We have to get back to the leasing process so people have stability. They understand that we're going to be in this game for a while. We can walk and chew gum." And that kind of just goes back to what Senator Bernie Sanders said like a year ago. Let's show the American people that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do two things. That was when they were trying to pass two separate bills, and well, they didn't get it done. But what is so frustrating about what he's actually saying and talking about is that oil companies have thousands of leases already. So the leasing program, the leasing process, I don't really know exactly where he's going with this, but some reports indicate that getting through the red tape is what's causing a lot of issues for these oil companies. Some say that from all those wells that we currently have, only 25% of them are even producing oil and gas leases. And according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, she says that we're likely to see another year in which 12-month inflation numbers remain very uncomfortably high. So that's not good news either, okay? The good news that we have today is that the government funding bill is getting closer, which means we won't have a government shutdown. There's more assistance for nutrition for children. That's great, but there's still a lot of other issues we got. And the other thing, and the big one, is Democrats are proposing another stimulus bill that would actually tax the revenue, okay, which the excessive revenue from some of these oil companies. It would tax them, and we would take that money and we could use that to provide some smaller stimulus checks to the American people. So that's at least some good news, because that means we are moving forward. There's some momentum, there's movement, there's progress. So we will see what happens, but that's what we know at this time. As always, as I know more, promise I'll come back on and share all latest news and updates. Just want to thank you guys for watching. Do me a favor, Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoyed today's video. Consider subscribing so you never miss an update, and I'll see you guys on the next one.